Welcome back to Tao of Twang. I'm Dave. So we've got a dominant seventh one chord jam here. It's G7. So that be one way you could address this as being the five chord in C, if you want to look at it that way. That's a good way to look at it for what I just demonstrated. And I'll show you, there's something really systematic about this intro jam today, right? It's not as free flowing as a lot of them are. And that's intentional. It's really a program, it's an exercise. There's a lot of free choices being made in what I just did. And I encourage you to approach it that way as well. But there's a very succinct program and method to this lesson. And so let's start by just now this track's a little, I jazzed this one up a little bit. I was doing those ones where I was just looping the rhythm guitar, and I thought, I want to, kind of got into this one a little bit more or whatever. That so there's a lot going on in that bass line and stuff. That can serve you well rather than kind of chasing it at a faster speed with your soloing. Kind of listen for these chord tones and stuff and let that track kind of groove behind you a little bit. So it'll allow you to sit on notes and still feel real musical. So here's what's going on here. And I've made a slide for each one of these. And let me just show you the first one here. When we say dominant seventh or the five chord, I don't want to drill into that too much because I want to get right to the playing part here. But basically, you've got a flat seven alteration from what would otherwise be a major scale. So if this was G, just a G major scale, a do re mi. Okay, wait, that's that flat seven. Okay, we call that Mixolydian when we're referencing it to a key study. In this case, that key would be C, the same notes that are in the C major scale, but starting and ending on G. Don't let that confuse you, right? That's a little bit of an intro to, modal thinking and theory and playing. But all we really need to know for this one is that we're using this Mixolydian scale for this G7 chord. Now this first slide, I've got an octave up here. Okay, the squares are the G, and I've got each one of these labeled. Now, if you noticed in that first thing I did in that intro is I just simply went. Okay, that's the G triad, G, B, D, root third, fifth, and then the flat seven, F. It's like you picked out notes from that seventh chord right there and made an arpeggio out of them, a real simple one. Root, 3, 5, flat 7. So what this lesson does is it gives you a map, a diagram, starting on each one of those chord tones and going up an octave. So the first one is just root to root. Okay. The second one is, and I'm not going to show you all of these up front here because, you work them out one at a time. The next one, I'll just put it up here real quick so you can see how this works, is from third to third. The third is B, okay? So, but you're using the same notes. Remember our continuums. Think of these notes. They can land anywhere within that river of notes, right? And it's not always just root to root, as being it's sort of the definition of the main scale. This is a way to really kind of systemize your couple of things. It'll naturally, by the way that we've arranged it, have you, accenting or landing on and exploiting a lot of chord tones in your improvisation. But it'll also give you a way to kind of climb and build in sort of a jam band type style through a longer instrumental section or jam. Most of us guitarists, I've noticed, don't mind a little bit longer instrumental portion of the song. All right. Hopefully, we're not doing too much of that while the singing's going on and so forth. We're doing more of like a backing role then. But when it's time to step out there or if we're just playing by ourselves or with a loop or something, we have a lot of time to build up and go around many times and kind of circle around those targets and then really go after it. And that makes our playing more emotional, more interesting, more musical. So each one of these chord tones, there's a diagram that takes you through an octave of that. So if I put this track on, I'm going to play the notes slowly, but I'll just kind of talk about that for a second. So let's start with the one that goes from root to root here first. Now, you have 7 notes and you're in 4, so your timing doesn't always add up that great with just straight octaves. So do a little bouncing around and make it fit musically like you want it to. That's root to root, and that's kind of our framework for that portion of our improvisation. Now, third. Keep going, 5th. Okay, and then that last one starts on the 7th, flat 7th. All right. So now I realize it's a little heady, right? Because this is really, the guide rails are pretty distinct on this approach that we're using, right? So after a while, when the thing I would challenge yourself here with is be able to, move about through those. Pretty good. This is going to take some different methods of practice for, depending on where you are with your understanding of all of this and your mechanics. You may need to stop it and just look at the diagrams. But don't, drive yourself crazy trying to memorize every one of those diagrams visually, and kind of don't get caught up in that as much as hearing that river of that Mixolydian. I turned mine down a little. Let that really bond, that soak in, immerse yourself in that, right? Really swim in it. And then use these diagrams as a way to just navigate the neck. Okay, so you have four different starting points: the root, the third, the fifth, and the flat seven. Now, I tried to make them kind of similar, using similar string groupings, right? So you get to practice some position changing and not just kind of, running up and down the scale in one place. That's pretty much it for this one. There's not a lot of, different stuff to discuss because you're playing the same sequence of notes, but framing it from chord tone to chord tone, and moving the positions around. But, the same things that we always talk about on the channel apply here. When you feel comfortable with one or more of those locations, then, kind of let yourself sink more into the musical part of it and find places where you can bend and do some pentatonic stuff that's kind of fits around with it in those different areas. So I'll just play a little bit more and then I'll get you to this loop, and the diagrams will be in the description section as well as embedded in the video that you just saw. All right, let me know how you do with this one. Take care.